Marie Anne Adelaide Lenormand is the most famous fortune teller and card reader in world history. She was raised in a convent, spent several times in prison, and wrote several books about her life. Much of what we think about her is false. For example, she is often referred to as Madame Lenormand. But she was never married. Therefore, all her books published during her lifetime are signed Mademoiselle Lenormand. Let's try to figure out which deck the famous fortune teller actually used and which ones have no connection to her. After the death of Mademoiselle Lenormand, her sole heir, her nephew, burned all her occult items, including card decks. And in her books, she often writes about fulfilled predictions, but never about her divination system. Can the hints left in her books help us understand which deck is being referred to? Lenormand lost her father at an early age, and shortly after, her mother, who had remarried by the time, left in her stepfather's family after her mother's death. She would constantly run away from home to spend time in the nearby gypsy camp. It was there that she became acquainted with card divination. This first clue points us towards the classic gypsy deck. Her stepfather sent the rebellious Marie Anne Adelaide far away from the gypsy camp to a convent. However, it was precisely there, in the convent's library, that she learned about the Atala system of divination. The problem is that the enigmatic Atala created two distinct systems of divination, one using a simple deck of 36 cards, and another using tarot cards, for which he even created his own deck. We can only speculate on what exactly Mademoiselle Lenormand chose. Moreover, there are testimonies that have been preserved, according to which she practiced divination, not only with cards, but also with palmistry, crystal balls, coffee grounds, and flowers. Books have survived to this day, unique instructions that make it clear that the first edition of the Oracle under the name of Lenormand was published in 1845, 2 years after her death. This deck was called The Great Game of Mademoiselle Lenormand in translation from French, indicating that it could be used for both divination and games like solitaire. Now we know this oracle as the Astro-Mythological Oracle with 52 cards. It is known that similar decks, called The Great Game, were produced during Mademoiselle Lenormand's lifetime. However, they were not named after her at the time. The author of The Three Musketeers, Alexandre Dumas, attended a session with the fortune teller and later described the meeting between Josephine Bagarne and Lenormand in his novel The Whites and the Blues, where such an oracle is used. From Alexandre Dumas's description, it is clear that the divination deck used by Lenormand had only recently appeared and contained special cards depicting the individuals being read. The descriptions of the cards themselves align perfectly with the so-called Great Game, which is now known as the Astro-Mythological Oracle of Lenormand. In that same year of 1845, the first Petit Oracle bearing her name was also published. This deck consisted of 36 cards, which were nearly identical to the game, called The Game of Hope, released in Germany in 1800 by the publisher Johann Caspar Hechtel. However, while The Game of Hope involved rolling dice and moving from card to card, leaping forward on some cards and going back on others, the Petit Oracle was primarily used for divination. In turn, The Game of Hope was clearly influenced by the book Fortune Telling from the Grounds of the Coffee Cup, published in Britain in the late 18th century. If the Lenormand oracles could still have some connection to her, the Lenormand Tarot deck definitely does not. During her lifetime, she could only use the Atala deck, which she considered her spiritual teacher. And his tarot deck is significantly different from the Lenormand Tarot, which corresponds to the traditional meanings of the Rider-Waite deck created much later. However, the Lenormand Tarot can be seen as a kind of life guide of the famous fortune teller. On the Priestess card, we see the fortune teller herself in prison. She was repeatedly sent behind bars, not always for her predictions. For example, the first time she was arrested for her sympathies towards the Jacobins. This particular moment is depicted in an engraving in her first book, but the image on the card is based on another engraving showing Lenormand sitting in a Belgian prison for illegal fortune-telling. This happened after Lenormand was expelled from France when she angered Napoleon with her prediction of his defeat in Russia. We see Napoleon himself and his spouse Josephine de Beauharnais on the Emperor and Empress cards, respectively. According to Lenormand, she was friends with Josephine since the times of the French Revolution. Images referring to the revolution can be found on many cards of the deck, both in the major arcana and several of the minor arcana. For example, the Death card with the guillotine, or the Hanged Man next to a revolution poster. There are several other examples throughout the deck. Unfortunately, we cannot say with certainty whether Mademoiselle Lenormand used the Astro-Mythological Oracle. Did she ever hold tarot cards in her hands? And what was her attitude towards the Petit Lenormand Oracle? Ultimately, all of this was unimportant to her. The main focus was on the predictions